The Lord be with you. A young boy lived in the country. His family had to use an outhouse, which the young boy hated. It was hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and as you might imagine, always smelly. The outhouse was located near the creek, so the boy decided one day that he would push it into the water. After a spring rain, the creek swelled, so the boy pushed it in. Later that night, his dad told him that he and the boy needed to make a trip to the woodshed. The boy knew that what this meant: punishment. He asked his father why, to which his dad replied, "Because someone pushed the outhouse into the creek, and I think that someone was you. Was it?" The boy responded that it was. Then he added, "Remember when George Washington's father asked him if he had chopped down the cherry tree? He didn't get into trouble because he told the truth." "That is correct," the dad said. But his father was not in the cherry tree when he cut it down. Actions have consequences. My great-nephew learned that lesson at a very early age. My niece and nephew always taught him that there would be consequences, or a consequence, to his actions. He might have to run around the house a few times or sit in a chair for a length of time. I thought it was brilliant. It kept their conversations away from talking about doing bad things, which can make a child think he or she is a bad person. Instead, talking about a consequence kept their conversation on the topic of what he had done, his behavior, and how it affected him and the lives of others around him. He learned his lesson. I was tickling him one day, just playing around, and he put up his hand and he said, "Steve, you have to stop. There will be a consequence." His parents are so smart. Most of the time, when we think about consequences, we think something is about to happen that we aren't going to like. But consequences can also be good. In the early days, Dallas Theological Seminary was in critical need of $10,000 to keep the work going. During a prayer meeting, renowned Bible teacher Harry Ironsides prayed, "Lord, you own the cattle on 1,000 hills. Please sell some of those cattle and send us the money to help us meet this need." Shortly after the prayer meeting, a check for $10,000 arrived at the school, sent days earlier by a friend who had no idea of the urgent need or of Ironsides' prayer. The man simply said that the money came from the sale of his cattle. I believe with all my heart that there are consequences to prayer. God hears, God answers, God blesses. I believe there are consequences to faithful living, to honoring God in what we do and say, to live seeking God's will and living according to the purposes of God, to picking up our crosses daily and following Jesus. I believe there are consequences to living a small faith, just as I believe there are consequences to living a large faith. I'm reminded of the story of a man who had done something wonderful, and the king called him in and told him he could mark off as much of the kingdom as he wanted, and it would be his. The man took his staff and traced a line in the dirt around himself. The king watched as he finished and said, "Is that all you want? Just what's in that circle?" The man said, "No, I want everything outside the circle." I think we do a great job of caring for each other and some others beyond our walls. But what if we drew a line around our church building and said that we are going to claim all the territory outside the circle for God? I want to live my life looking beyond where I am and what I can do, to looking where God is and seeing what God can do. Because I know there are consequences to a small faith, just like I am convinced that there are consequences to a large faith. So believe big. Don't make me have to bring my great-nephew here. There will be a consequence, even if he is only 8 years old. Amen.